I really like Crypt of the NecroDancer. This shouldn't come as a surprise, after all it was the main topic of my first storytime video and it is still in the top 3 of my official ranking. Even after finishing my video about it, I kept firing it up from time to time. I just can't get enough of its unique blend of roguelike dungeon crawling and rhythm-based movement. But here's another thing I really like. The Legend of Zelda. These games and me go way back, and even though the series kept changing with each entry, I have fond memories with most of them. But that's a story for another day, because today I look at one of the rare examples when two things I really like got combined. Cadence of Hyrule. The story of this game is almost too good to be true. When Brace Yourself Games, the developer behind Crypt of the NecroDancer, were working on a Switch port for their game, they pitched Nintendo ideas for the Legend of Zelda themed DLC. Apparently Nintendo was into the idea. So much that this DLC soon turned into a whole new project, and Cadence of Hyrule was the result. If only it could always be that easy. This backstory alone makes it a game worth looking at, and as a fusion of two things I really like, this might be the perfect game for me. But is it really? Let's find out. I want to begin by pointing out how unlikely this game actually is. The Legend of Zelda is one of the treasured and well-guarded brands of Nintendo, and most titles were developed in-house, even freaking Link's crossbow training. But there are a few exceptions, most famously The Legend of Zelda, Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons, Four Swords and the Minish Cap, who were all done by Flagship, a development team of Capcom. These are of high quality, and while playing you hardly notice that they were not by Nintendo. However, an even more famous, or rather infamous example would be the 3 Zelda games for the Philips CDI: Faces of Evil, Wand of Gamelot and Zelda's Adventure.
Gee, it sure is boring around here.
They are the result of an ill-fated deal with Philips to create a CD-based add-on for the Super Nintendo. This is somehow interwoven into the origin of the Sony PlayStation and definitely an interesting story, but probably not one I will be telling, because I tend to act like Nintendo and ignore the existence of these games. They are considered the worst of the series, and they might be one of the reasons why Nintendo is so protective with its IPs in the first place. But if you thought these were the weirdest Zelda games, then you obviously have never heard of freshly picked Tingle's Rosy Rupee Land, and of its sequel, Ripened Tingle's Balloon Trip of Love. I cannot blame you, because before researching for this video I hadn't heard about them as well. These games star Tingle and he travels the world, ventures into dungeons and This video is not long enough for explaining these games, just know that they exist, were developed by Vanpool, and let's move on to Hyrule Warriors. At this point in time, it has become a whole sub-series with 3 individual games. They are the product of a cooperation with Koei Tecmo, and that's why they look so similar to Dynasty Warriors. Muso games is how experts call them, and Hyrule Warriors and its sequels are basically Zelda-themed Musos. And these are all the Zelda games not developed by Nintendo. The Tingle games are hard to categorize and the CDI games an error in history, but the rest were done by acclaimed developers and follow proven formulas. And then there's Cadence of Hyrule, an indie-style game with a very quirky concept developed by a small studio with just a couple of games and one surprise hit under their belt. I cannot stress enough how lucky we are to have this game. But is it any good? Well, as Navi would put it, the music in this game is fantastic. In my first PlayStation, when I was stepping into the overworld, this badass remix of Tal Heights from Link's Awakening was playing and I was immediately sold. I am a fan of composer Danny Baranowsky's work for Crypt of the NecroDancer, and hearing his style combined with iconic Zelda melodies is pure joy for my ears. The soundtrack features many songs from all over the series and it's definitely worth a listen, even if you don't plan to play this game. The music is a star of Cadence of Hyrule, but the visuals are pretty good too. Somehow they managed to make it look like a 2D Zelda game, but also to transfer the style of Crypt of the NecroDancer. Just look at these bokoblins. Overall, the game looks most similar to A Link to the Past, which I really appreciate since A Link to the Past is the best, but there are references to most games of the series sprinkled in. Especially the selection of enemies feels like a best-of collection. All in all, the presentation is top-notch, so let's get into the gameplay. I'm pleased to tell you that the core feature of Crypt of the NecroDancer made the jump into Cadence of Hyrule. At the core of this game is the turn-based system in which each turn equals one beat of the music and can be used for one action. This is visualized by this Triforce icon. With that, everything moves to the beat, and this creates this mesmerizing feeling of playing a turn-based dungeon crawler and a rhythm game at the same time. Game design and music combined. This means that the way how the music is composed has a direct influence on the gameplay. My prime example for this in my Crypt of the NecroDancer video was how the beats per minute of each song was used to slowly increase the difficulty of each floor of the crypt. The faster the beat, the less time you have on each of your turns, and the more likely it becomes that you miss a turn. I did the same analysis with the music here, and unfortunately it's not as clearly structured as in Crypt of the NecroDancer. I would still argue that the BPM of each song was carefully selected, but when looking at the different areas and dungeons, then I couldn't find a clear method for difficulty through music. Instead, the game opts for a classic approach. Over the course of the game, you will encounter stronger enemies with more health and more dangerous moves. And the dungeons feature special gimmicks that you need to adapt to. It works well and creates a fair difficulty curve, but in my opinion it's a shame that music doesn't play a big role here. Nevertheless, there are some great examples for game design through music. Like when you clear all the enemies in one area, then the song dynamically switches to a peaceful version to indicate that the fight is over. No text pop-up or victory screen needed. And each dungeon theme has two versions. We were listening to the Frozen Grotto song until now, but when you get deeper into the dungeon, an instrument gets added. In this case an oboe, which makes the song more complex and thus harder to follow the beat. And it also ties into the story, because in this game you are traveling Hyrule to find magical instruments, and the oboe is the one you are searching here. But overall, in terms of how the music influences the game design, Cadence of Hyrule is less interesting than Crypt of the NecroDancer. However, this game adds a bunch of features from its Zelda lineage, and that leads to a whole new structure. Here you are not simply traversing one big dungeon, you adventure through Hyrule. This game has an overworld with a Zelda 1 style map, and you explore it at your own pace. You can travel in any direction, explore different regions, and tackle the main dungeons in any order. On each of these screens you will have a combat encounter, and on most of them there is one or more secrets to uncover. By exploring, winning battles and finding chests, you will gain new items, each of which you probably know from other Zelda titles. With that, you slowly but steadily increase your arsenal and can use your equipment in battle or to solve puzzles. And by finding heart pieces you can increase your health, so the more you explore the more powerful you will get, just as in any other Zelda game. It's not as handcrafted though, like your quest in Ocarina of Time and the like. After all, there are still some roguelike elements in the game. The map is semi-randomly created, and the places where you find specific items or even the main dungeons change with every playthrough. This increases the sense of adventure and makes exploring Hyrule thrilling, but your journey is less consistent, less designed than in other Zeldas. But if you value tight and exciting gameplay and can get into the rhythm-based movement, then it will be a lot of fun. This is definitely a great combination that captures the strengths of both of its influences. But I still like Crypt of the NecroDancer more. It was exciting seeing this gameplay system in a Zelda world, and fighting iconic monsters to these fantastic tunes is great. But when I started my second playthrough with a freshly unlocked character that resembled my favorite game mode from Crypt of the NecroDancer, one thing started bugging me. I observed myself skipping many of the overworld areas to get directly to the dungeons. I did clear some of them, but most of the time I deemed them not worth my time. Because no matter how fun the gameplay system is, repeating it multiple times with the same weapons and slight variations of similar enemies got stale fast. Crypt of the NecroDancer is a brisk, high-intensity game, and before you can get used to the foes of one area, you will already have moved into the next. Or died. It's non-stop action with meaningful decisions at almost every beat. These battles on the overworld are a weak version of that. And I quickly realized that my favorite game mode was the so-called dungeon mode, in which you skip exploring the overworld and just have to fight your way through a series of dungeons, which is basically what you do in Crypt of the NecroDancer. So if I compare these two games, then Crypt of the NecroDancer is easily the superior alternative. And if I compare Cadence of Hyrule to other Zelda titles, then I can quickly think of some crucial aspects that are missing. Intricate dungeon and puzzle design, or how your progress is tied to a story and the iconic moments this produces. There is a lot of charm here, but Cadence of Hyrule had to skip some elements of the Zelda formula. In the end, this combination of great things resulted in its own game, and I appreciate that. Brace Yourself Games could have just reskinned Crypt of the NecroDancer and call it a day. Instead, they created a unique experience you can find nowhere else. An enjoyable mix of free exploration and rhythm game. Just don't expect that it surpasses its parent games. However, there's also the Temple of Brainstorms. This is a dungeon in the Symphony of the Mask DLC, and it somehow debunks a lot of what I just said. It's like an alternate approach to combining The Legend of Zelda and Crypt of the NecroDancer, a second vision for this game. When you enter it, you are stripped of all of your items and kinda have to start fresh. And this dungeon follows a completely different structure. It mostly plays like one of the original The Legend of Zelda or Link's Awakening. It's still randomly generated, but you wouldn't notice that on your first visit. You enter different rooms with different combat or puzzle challenges, and they actually revolve around the unique movement system that follows the beat. Like these rooms, in which you need to lure your enemies onto one of these yellow spots and defeat them there, all in harmony with the beat. This right here is music and game design combined. Or how about these chambers, which you can only clear if you manage to stay on beat for the whole encounter? Or whatever this is. There are many cool ideas here, and the icing on the cake is the boss, which I will not spoil here, but it's a great rhythmic conclusion for this special place. And that's not all. Over the course of the several floors, you will find some of your items again, and they are needed to solve some traditional Zelda-style puzzles. Suddenly, you need to analyze the layout, understand how the different rooms are connected, and find out where your newfound tool could help you progress. It's like a giant puzzle box. I love this dungeon, and I love how it feels like Zelda and Crypt of the NecroDancer at the same time, but in a different way than the rest of the game. And I love how I got stuck on the final floor and couldn't wrap my head around it until I finally found a way to use my items in a sneaky way to somehow skip the puzzle and move on. It is just one dungeon and doesn't fix my gripes with the overworld, but it shows another very creative way to combine The Legend of Zelda and Crypt of the NecroDancer. Also, it's really hard. The intensity of some of these puzzle fights is through the roof, and the dungeon easily reaches a level of complexity worthy of any water temple. It managed to satisfy my Zelda dungeon craving and my appetite for rhythm-based gameplay. If you ask me, then this is a concept that Brace Yourself Games should explore more thoroughly in a sequel. It's definitely a proof of their creativity. So if you are into game design, this is a must-play with many interesting features, even outside the Temple of Brainstorms. I myself will continue playing Crypt of the NecroDancer when I feel the call of the rhythm, but I'm really glad I tried this one and saw its ideas. Like how they translated classic Zelda monsters into this new style of gameplay. Look at this one and guess its name. It's Go Maracas. Brilliant. Anyway, no mori for watching and stay tuned.
Every world has its evils. And when the powers that be refuse to fight, someone must rise to the occasion to do what must